I used to know this guy that ran a small independent record label called Occult Research. I was initially just interested in the music that he was putting out, but it turns out that this title is literal. He was actually conducting occult research. I didn't know this until I found out that he was a Freemason. He didn't actually tell me this, I had to figure it out on my own. But when I learned he was affiliated with this organization, he confirmed it, and we discussed his involvement to a certain degree. Mostly we just talked about music, but every now and then the conversation would steer towards Gnosticism or psychedelics or something like that. And it was pretty clear to me that this guy actually knew what he was talking about. He described Freemasonry as being dedicated to the study of Gnostic Christianity. This was the first time I had ever heard anyone admit that this group was more than a simple social club or a way to get away from the wife or something like that. What makes this guy different than other Freemasons that I've known is that he was actually willing to admit it. Most of them do not unless they're actively trying to recruit you. Confessing his involvement makes him an oath breaker, so he is technically a hero for disclosing some of this stuff to me. I actually saw him get threatened over this at one point, and at the time I didn't know what I was looking at, but it makes perfect sense to me now. Initially, I didn't think much of any of this. He was just an acquaintance that I talked to online sometimes. I thought Freemasonry sounded kind of interesting, but I didn't particularly want to get involved with it myself. Basically, all of the police in my area are active in this organization, and I wasn't too interested in sitting at the same table as them, as they've been hassling me for being a marijuana smoker for basically all my life. I had noticed that your average cop seems to be more alive than the people that they persecute, and I had never truly understood why. In my prior worldview, I had seen them as nothing more than simple order followers that were basically just drones of the state. As such, I started to wonder if it was possible that Freemasonry had something to do with the light in their eyes. I was also quite intrigued by the fact that alchemy and occultism had apparently survived into the modern era despite being discredited by the institutions of our time. Now I know why that is. They are simply trying to protect their secrets. In any case, I eventually fell out of touch with this guy. He abandoned his social media accounts and stopped releasing albums, which I thought was too bad because personally, I think that record label was amazing regardless of its ties to the occult, but that's another matter entirely. Shortly thereafter, I found myself leaving the internet for my own reasons. This was during the COVID era, and the related propaganda simply became too much for me. What my friend had to say did stick with me, and when combined with my own research, heavy use of THC, and simply spending more time offline and outdoors, I eventually had an epiphany about the allegory of the cave. This is at the root of Masonic philosophy. It essentially says that society as a whole is nothing more than a giant show. Shakespeare goes into this territory heavily, and so do quite a few other works of contemporary art that have been influenced by Masonic thought. It is worth noting that I am pretty well read for a modern individual. Coming into awareness of the situation at hand would not have been possible without this. When I say that the Western canon is a Tower of Babel, this is what I'm talking about. The entire thing is loaded with esoteric concepts and allegories that are there specifically because they're trying to inspire some kind of societal awakening. They have been building up to this moment for a very long time. This is what you would call a Golden Dawn event. Occultists seem to think that a new era will be born when esoteric teachings become available to the general public. I personally don't give a fuck about any of that. At this point, I would just like to go get a milkshake or something with another actual person. I have been isolated for way too long. I took this new insight as an opportunity to reach out to my friend at Occult Research again. And to my surprise, he responded almost immediately. This guy works for the government, so I'm pretty appreciative of the fact that he was able to make time for this. In case you haven't figured it out already, the state itself is a Masonic institution. I told him what I was going through, and this motherfucker told me that he could see my point. This is not what you want to hear from a Freemason if you are not initiated into their society. I can tell you that. This is an allusion to the point on a drawing compass, and I suppose that it means that he could see that I understood the material. I initially took this as a compliment, but at the time I didn't know just how much trouble I was actually in. I was happy to find that what I was going through wasn't some kind of psychotic break or anything like that. Losing my old perspective made everything incredibly psychedelic. I no longer knew what was possible, and I can definitely see how someone might lose their mind by experimenting with the occult. Instead, I had apparently reached some kind of plane of illumination that has remained elusive to most people of my social stature. At around this time, I also noticed that my spell check was acting very strangely, and so were some of the advertisements on my telephone. Shortly thereafter, I was summoned to the local emergency room at the request of my doctor, and I was unsure why. It turns out that they wanted to screen me for psychosis to make sure that I wasn't about to lose my mind. This is an important detail to note because I had not made an appointment or contacted anyone other than my old friend. This visit was peculiar to say the least. There were paper signs hanging up everywhere that had contradictory instructions on them, and I was placed in front of a computer screen that hit me with a rapid succession of med students that had questions for me. Some of the stuff that they asked wasn't even related to medicine at all. Instead, they wanted to know my opinions on things like gun ownership and stuff like that. One of these med students was even chanting what sounded like a mantra when he talked to us. My girlfriend at the time was there with me, and she said it sounded like he was trying to mimic the rhythm of keyboard typing. I'm pretty sure she was right about this. I humored them and gave them factual answers. I was then discharged without incident, diagnosis, or explanation. So I helped myself to a few packets of the tea that they had stocked at the coffee bar and left. I am definitely not mentally ill. These people are the strange ones. After this, I met a girl online named Erin. She sent me unsolicited nude photographs and a physical address, along with instructions to come find her in real life. This singular interaction was the entire extent of our communication, and I haven't heard from her since. I was left with the impression that I had just been invited into a trap. I didn't understand how she had found me at first, but now I suspect that the NSA had something to do with it. This is the only explanation that makes rational sense. I have quite a few questions for my government, and I am pretty sure that I am on a need to know basis for at least some of this stuff. In one of these photographs, Erin had markings on her hand that were alchemical in nature. Researching the green sun leads to the green lion. This icon seems to indicate that women drink the life energy of men. The color green represents fertility, so this is a mutual exchange. I am personally of the opinion that the people creating icons like this had a very unhealthy understanding of sex and relationships. The ancient alchemists had a rather demented view on women in general. I got black widowed, and even I think it's a bit extreme. It is most likely that the girl posing in these photographs is a member of something called the Order of the Eastern Star. This is essentially the women's auxiliary of Freemasonry. Their logo bears a striking resemblance to the sigil of Baphomet. This is a strange idol that was adopted for worship by the Knights Templar. The icon of Baphomet is essentially just a candle on top of a uterus. It represents illumination of the female reproductive process. Modern Freemasonry claims heavy continuity with both the Templars and the Brotherhood of the Rose Cross. The latter group is also known as the Rosicrucians. The symbol of this organization invokes the weight of the divine knowledge of reproduction. The rose is vaginal in nature, and the crucifix is more or less self explanatory. The ancient alchemists worked out something that was essentially akin to Darwinism. It isn't as refined, but it covers similar territory. It should not be surprising to note that Darwin himself was most likely a Freemason. In addition to providing esoteric education, one of the things that the Eastern Star does is to train some of its members in the art of seduction. These girls are essentially professional muses. They are femme fatales. One of the acronyms that Ostara is fond of is fatal, fairest among thousands, altogether lovely. I would actually agree with this statement if only they weren't beholden to a cult that is corrupted to its core. Some of the women that I know that are involved with this are some of the most talented and intelligent people that I have ever met. I'm actually in love with one of these girls, but we will get to that in a little bit. Yes, I know how that sounds, but we've been at it for long enough that I've actually gotten to know her as a person. Unfortunately, we cannot be together because I am not of the order. What these girls seem to do is to use the promise of affection and eventual companionship to torture introverted young men with artistic ability. They will lead you on, and they do so more or less indefinitely. This is allegedly done to both inspire them and motivate them to action. And they've been doing this for a very long time. For example, one of these girls is supposedly the reason why Van Gogh lost his ear. I highly doubt that this can be conclusively proven, but the implications are there. They can also use their talents to completely destroy someone, and they're very efficient at this. This is what it means to be Black Widowed. In most cases, I don't think it's the girls themselves that are deciding to do this. They seem to be acting out the will of Freemasonry. Erin also described herself as a Lord of Three. Freemasonry sees the number three as being representative of a butt. So, this means that she is in total control of her ass and the hypnotic power that it can have on a man. However, there is a little bit more to it than that. Every woman has three holes on their body that can be used for sexual purposes. Therefore, Lord of Three. I suppose it could be a reference to the 3 degrees of Freemasonry in a more conventional sense as well, but since these are the harlots of Shakespeare we are talking about, the sexual definition is going to be the ultimate one. This organization is sex obsessed beyond measure. When I initially started studying spirituality, it was because I wanted to get away from stuff like this. Those in charge have found a way to lead people around by their sexual impulses, and they do so in spades. Freemasonry is a sex cult, and it is the worst kind of sex cult. Frustration and denial are the pillars upon which it is built. Only the wealthy and privileged are truly able to reap the benefits of this situation. In other words, it is a sex cult in which almost nobody ever actually gets laid. Anyways, after all of this happened, I contacted my friend at Occult Research again, and he told me that dwelling on this is only going to make it worse. Unfortunately, it's very hard to stop thinking about this sort of thing when it happens to you. If you are a lonely young man, I would highly advise against trying to track one of these girls down. I mean this. There is more than one way of being sucked dry by the fair sex. I can assure you of that. If these girls feel inclined to do so, they will absolutely fuck you up. I know that summoning a succubus sounds exotic, and you might think it is a workaround to conventional dating, but it is not. The way to being considered worthy of someone else's romantic attention is through self improvement. That is what it all comes down to. What the fuck do you think is going to happen to you if you attempt this? I mean, seriously. My entire life fell apart, and I didn't even go out looking for these girls. They essentially came to me. Furthermore, if some of you people think you're going to resurrect the witch trials over this, then we have a very serious problem. This is, at its core, a cry for help. I was in a relationship at this point in time, and I was actually trying to improve things between my partner and I, so it doesn't make sense to take me out for moral reasons. I could see the justification behind doing this to someone who is actually abusive, but this was not me at this point in time. The girls of Ostara are mostly blameless. They are simply used as bait. It appears that the culprits behind this developed a fairly complex psychological profile on my girlfriend and I, and then leaned on our pressure points until something broke. When this is being done to you without your knowledge, it can be quite effective. They would increase my girlfriend's workload at her job. Suddenly, my pharmacy would have problems filling my medications, and so on. The pharmacy was ultimately my undoing. At one point, I received a text message stating that my prescriptions were ready to be picked up and that the counter was open until 7 p.m. This place always closed at 6, so I was wondering if those involved with Freemasonry were allowed special privileges in this regard, and I was now being let in on them. This is exactly what they wanted me to think. My girlfriend and I had a major argument over this, and she ended up getting me institutionalized because of it. Essentially, she doesn't believe in conspiracy, and she decided that I must be going insane. I just wanted to drive by the damn place and check it out. That's all. I was forcibly removed from my home by the police and placed in a hospital yet again. This time, it was a psychiatric ward. This place was even stranger than that trip to the emergency room that I mentioned earlier. It's hard to explain, but the entire atmosphere was off. A few of the orderlies had tattoos in Latin, and they responded to me positively when I pointed this out. I brought up Jungian psychology because this is what I assumed they were students of at the time, and they seemed quite amused that I was able to notice them. One of these orderlies was a girl, and her tattoo read Tempus Fugit. This translates to Time Flies. She was all gothed out as well, which I thought was kind of refreshing for a hospital setting. The other attendant was a man, and I can't remember the exact phrasing on his inscription, but it translated to something like, "A life well lived never fades away." I asked him where this quote was from, and he cited the Egyptian god Horus. Then questioned him on what I should call this culture within a culture, and he responded by saying that it was nameless. $5 says that he's probably just a Freemason, but whatever. I actually rather like the studious ones. I don't want people to get the wrong idea here. The culture surrounding Masonry is absolutely hideous at times, but some of the people involved seem like they aren't so bad. One of the patients here had an Eye of Horus tattoo on her hand as well, so this deity came up more than once in this place. This was an older woman that was essentially a doppelganger of one of my living aunts. I know that sounds strange, but I couldn't tell her apart from my relative at one point. She kept calling me Isaiah, and she told me to stop pursuing my girlfriend and, quote, go after the other person that you like. It is very important to note that I didn't say anything to anyone at all about my love life the entire time I was in this place. We are now close to reaching the ultimate point of this video. This woman was most likely talking about my friend Amy. I'm pretty sure that this patient is part of the Eastern Star as well. Not all of their members are Black Widows. I have no idea what she was doing inside of a mental hospital or how she knew what she knew about me, but the lines here between inmate and jailer are very blurry, and they always have been. Her final words to me were this: if you kill yourself, you won't get to see heaven. Shortly after this interaction, I noticed that the hospital had decided to screen the last 20 minutes or so of the Disney film The Aristocats. For whatever reason, they didn't start this movie at the beginning. These were the final scenes. This is specifically the part where the alley cat is allowed to join the family of the princess. I took this fairly personally given the specific circumstances that I had found myself in. Unfortunately, Masonry never fucking delivers. This has been a few years in the making at this point, and nothing like this has happened yet. Just like my trip to the ER, I was found mentally stable upon discharge. This hospital did not find anything wrong with me psychologically. I wasn't given any new medications or a novel diagnosis or anything like that. For some reason, my girlfriend at the time was very disappointed to hear this. I think she wanted them to tell me that I was delusional and then proceed to fix me somehow with their drugs and their lies. A final curiosity is that every single fire alarm in the building went off at once at the exact moment that I was being released. I asked the guy that was seeing me out about this, and he dismissed it by saying it was just a coincidence. I was given a taxi ride courtesy of the hospital, and they dropped me off at my mom's house. Unfortunately, I could not return to my old home because now my girlfriend wanted nothing to do with me. Our relationship was essentially over. I just didn't know it yet. It was at this point that my friend Amy made her move. She is the true Black Widow of the story. Erin was basically just a decoy. I wouldn't be surprised if the girl in those photographs was not even who I was actually talking to. I haven't properly introduced Amy yet, mostly because I simply don't know how. Trying to comprehend this girl is essentially a full time job. I am dealing with a legitimate mystery here, and I only have so much information regarding what is actually going on. To put it simply, it appears that an NSA agent is in love with me. The feeling is mutual, but we are unfortunately forbidden from being together. Amy is someone that I've known for many years, and I've spent countless hours talking to her online during this time. I've gotten to know her very well, but she is still quite a mystery to me. Unfortunately, this does not work both ways. If you can imagine having a major crush on a girl and then learning that she knows basically everything that you have ever done, then you can imagine what it's like to be me. When I say that she knows everything, I mean that she really does know basically everything. This is because she has direct access to my webcam and she makes very liberal use of it. I know this for a fact because she has demonstrated this to me. Another thing that I'm aware of is that she's caught up in this silly cult of theirs in a major way. One of the reasons that I know this is because the term Eastern Star wasn't even in my vocabulary until she taught it to me. In addition to talking online, sometimes she'll send me real mail. We've traded mixtapes before, sometimes she'll write me songs. We've been at this for a very long time. Because of this, I am pretty sure that she actually likes me. Unfortunately, we rarely get to talk on the phone or see each other in person, although both of these things have happened in the past. We are only allowed a certain amount of time to interact with each other. They basically just give us visitation rights every now and then. This is why I ultimately hate Freemasonry so much. They dangle her in front of me like a fucking cat toy. In the past, she would often take the time that we had together as an opportunity to try to teach me esoteric information. But she couldn't tell me directly what she wanted me to know because this would constitute as an oath break. So she would employ things like object lessons instead. For example, these two stamps have been placed next to each other with intent. This is a reference to the moon rabbits, which is an old myth of arcane value. This is why I love her so much. I have never known anyone else that was capable of anything like this at all. At no point during any of this did she ever indicate that she was romantically interested in me. I never minded this because I simply enjoyed her company. This dynamic changed the moment I got home from the hospital. She started overtly flirting with me in a way that she had never done before. It is only in retrospect that I realized that she was trying to lead me away from the girl that I was with. I could have been attempting to mend my existing relationship with the time that I was using to talk to her instead. I was pretty upset about what had just happened between us, and Amy and I have a lot more in common, anyways, so it is only natural that I directed my attention towards her in the way that I did. She led me on for several months, and then the day after Valentine's Day of 2023, she ripped my heart out and ate it. This came out of nowhere. I did not see it coming at all. After doing this, she disappeared for 6 months, and I thought she was never coming back, but she did, only for them to take her away yet again. I initially assumed that she was doing this of her own agency, but now I do not believe that this is the case at all. I rarely hear from her at this point, but when I do, she essentially just pretends like nothing happened between us. She still hasn't been honest with me. The only time that she comes close is when she's communicating visually. Some of her art and social media posts hint at a deeper meaning to all of this. But because of the oath that she has taken, she can't talk about it directly. I haven't been given any solid answers about anything, but much has been implied. One of these implications is that they are essentially holding her for ransom. I am only making this video because she has requested that I do so, and recounting all of this is the hardest thing that I have ever done. It appears that we are being put through some kind of strange ritual that is possibly Egyptian in nature. During her initial absence, I did a lot of research, and it turns out that we are star-crossed. What this means is that our birth dates place us on opposite ends of the night sky. To make things even stranger, there is a total solar eclipse on the day after my birthday this year, and it is somehow tied to all of this. In addition to being star-crossed, we are also from rival houses. These are, of course, the Masonic world and the Square world. I would agree that they are both alike in dignity. In another allusion to Shakespeare, Amy is Hermione. She has been given an advanced Hermetic education at no small expense. One of the many things that she studied is embalming, which fits with the Egyptian connotations of all of this. I am basically in love with a punk rock Cleopatra. Do not envy my lot in life. Even I think this girl is kind of scary sometimes. However, she is not nearly as frightening as the institutions that rule us. They have seemingly segregated both of us from each other and the world around us. I don't know the particulars of her situation, but I am being kept in some kind of psychological jar. This means that I am not allowed any meaningful human contact with basically anyone. Quite a few people within Masonry seem to know at least something about this situation, but it appears that they have been forbidden from directly speaking to me. Doing this to certain people is apparently some kind of established alchemical practice, but I can't find much straightforward information on this. Alchemists used to communicate their ideas with encoded images in the same way that Freemasons do, and these are basically all I have to go by. It is worth noting that the original alchemists used to communicate this way because they were afraid of persecution. This new generation owns practically everything. They have completely hypnotized the population, so they have nothing to fear in the same way that the ancient practitioners did. In any case, this situation is bigger than us. It allegedly has something to do with the Tetragrammaton and the so called founding fathers of America. and a bunch of other stuff that seems like it shouldn't be connected, but it is. What's most distressing is that I can't get a single person to talk to me about this situation. People either doubt what I have to say or they are in on it and committed to their oath. Somebody within the United States government knows at least something about all of this, and I want to be let in on it because I have the right to know. The primary reason that I have for assuming that the government has knowledge of this is because one of the quotations on the back of the Great Seal of the United States is from a strange prophecy that seems somehow related to this situation. With that said, I am unsure of anything these days, especially if it's related to Amy. I first met this girl when I was a teenager, and she was living under an assumed name at the time. This was years and years ago, and I didn't even realize that this was the same person until recently. Yes, I am sure it is the same girl. Amy and I are real people, and I don't understand this game that they're having us play. I have plenty of proof to substantiate my claims, but I have to try to survive in this bizarre and heartless world in addition to creating this material. So I don't have the ability to do all of this in a punctual fashion. This isn't how I wanted to tell this story, and it is far from complete. I'll never be able to do it justice anyways unless I can find out for certain what she's been going through as well. I am only one half of an equation, and I don't know if they ever intend to actually put us together. I've been working on a book about all of this, but the interest just isn't there, so I am making these videos instead. My interactions with Amy have left me with an entire trove of information related to the true occult. Secret societies are real, and I'm pretty sure that I have most of their initiation rights, so if you would be interested in something like that, then this would be the place to look. Yes, most of them typically do just recycle the same information. My personal situation is one thing. Driving these motherfuckers out into the light is another matter entirely, and it definitely needs to be done. This stuff gets real results, which is why it has endured over the millennia. They are subtle, but they are there. There's a lot more to say about both Amy and the occult, but this video is long enough, so I'm going to finish it up and release it. I hope I have the strength inside of me to keep doing this, but I am running out of resources and time, so hopefully this will garner at least some attention.